Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event of the evening.
Hold one, Andre.
You're not good at this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list.
Oh my God!
Sorry, no speak English.
Dummy. Goodbye and good night. Hold two, on bar.
It's still real to me, damn it!
Dummy.
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
Hold three, Lamas covered. Three-handle family Gradunzel.
Mamma mia!
And now, Unchained.media presents the B+ Podcast with your host, Greg Unchained.
It's me, Austin! It was me all along, Austin!
Number 4, armbar.
I will never retire!
I still got 200 more. I got 200 more holes to list.
All right, fellow B+ players, welcome to the B+ Podcast. I am your host, Greg Unchained. Today is Friday. You know what that means. It's Aussie Grapps Day. It's our favourite day at the B+, where we sit down and we talk about everything to do with Australian professional wrestling. We also like to have an interview each week with a Aussie grappler or grappler adjacent person. This week, I sat down to talk with the Australian Sensation Craven ahead of his trip over to the Crash in Mexico. It's a really great chat, so stick around for that. But first, let's take a look at this week in Aussie Grapps news. Obviously, the first thing I have to talk about, World Series Wrestling has wrapped up their Elite Takeover Tour. 4 dates, 4 shows, Melbourne, Perth and Sydney. What a fantastic weekend of professional wrestling we were treated to here in Australia with names like Cody Rhodes, Joey Ryan. I mean, we had 3 IWGP United States Heavyweight Championship title defenses here on Australian soil. They were, of course, contested under staring contest, Dwayne Paper Scissors and Thumb War rules, but they were still title defenses nonetheless. They count. They absolutely count. And it was an entertaining show. Obviously, Bandito, Brian Cage, Volta, and all the best Aussie grapplers as well. Robbie Eagles was there, Jack Bonza was there, Mick Moretti was there, Chris Basso. It was really good to see some of the guys getting out of state who don't normally get out of state. So the Phillip brothers performed in Sydney, as did Chris Basso and Slex. They performed in Melbourne. Gods and Monsters were in Melbourne as well. It's fantastic to see World Series Wrestling facilitating that travel interstate for guys, so that more of the Aussie Grapps community can be a witness to stuff that's happening in other states. It's one of the best things about World Series Wrestling and one of the main reasons we love World Series Wrestling. Now, we did do an entire podcast dedicated to the World Series Wrestling Tour. I didn't get to go to any of the shows since I'm in Adelaide and we were left out this time, but I did speak to Kevin Chiat, who went to the show in Perth. I spoke to Lyle from On the Turnbuckle podcast, who went to the shows in Melbourne. He also talked briefly about Glow as well, which we're going to touch on shortly. And, of course, our very own Big Boy Mikey attended the shows in Sydney, spoke to him fresh as it happened. The biggest headline, of course, Robbie motherfucking Eagles, the first ever Australian to hold World Series Wrestling gold. Sorry, I should clarify. Concrete Davidson is also Australian, and he holds tag team gold, but the first Australian to hold singles World Series Wrestling gold. Robbie Eagles dethroning Austin Aries to become the World Series Wrestling heavyweight champion, world champion. I think it's a world championship now because of Austin Aries had held it and took it around the place. So the World Series Wrestling world champion, Robbie Eagles, with his first world championship victory. Congratulations, Robbie. Couldn't think of a better guy for it to happen to. He gave an amazing speech at the end, obviously. It was a fantastic show. Really good feel-good moment to end the show on as well. Everyone was behind Robbie, and he picked up that win for Australia, dethroning Austin Aries and becoming our very own champion. I'm really looking forward to the next tour now. 2019 should have some... 2018 has been... we're starting to get towards the end of the year now. We're starting to wrap things up, and we're looking at it, and we're like, 2018, man, it has been a year. It has been one hell of a year. Lots of really big things happened this year, and it's very exciting to see what 2019 is going to hold. Can we top it? I believe we can. I think we're moving on to bigger and better things. And part of that is, of course, World Series Wrestling, and they're doing a fantastic job. So shout out World Series Wrestling. Check them out if you can. The DVDs should be available soon on worldserieswrestling.com. Give them a follow on the social medias. And congratulations, Robbie Eagles, on becoming World Series Wrestling Champion. And congratulations to everyone who was involved in those incredible shows over the weekend. But of course, World Series Wrestling were not the only company running shows last weekend. A big one that came to my attention was Future Wrestling Australia. They had a really good card. Matty Wahlberg was on that one. This one took place in Dural. Matty Wahlberg was defending his FWA title. We also had a scheduled match there with Tessa Blanchard taking on Savannah Summers and Xena, who had Kingsley at ringside, of course. But it did not go according to plan. Apparently, it ended up being turned into a tag team match with Lee against Savannah Summers and Xena. So that one looks interesting. Definitely want to see that one when it becomes available, because it looks. I want to see how that all played out, and of course, seeing Lee tagging with Tessa Blanchard is something I would definitely be interested in. Also on that show, Nikki Van Blair, one half of the Plastics, turned on Jason Dewhurst. So in Future Wrestling Australia, he's also aligned with a team called Debauchery. That is Ricky South and Parker Tomas, and Nikki Van Blair is at ringside sort of doing the manager shtick with them. And he turned on Jason Dewhurst in the main event, so costing him the shot at Matty Wahlberg's FWA Championship. Hit him with the DDT. I reached out to ask him why. Why, Nikki, why? He simply said it had to be done. So we're probably going to have to tune into the next show to see why that exactly happened. The Plastics are still scheduled for Wrestling Go, so it appears that alternate universe rule is in effect here. Of course, much like in the comic books I love, you have the Ultimate Universe, you have the 616 Universe, you have infinite universes really within Marvel itself, and then of course you still have DC, and DC have different universes and stuff as well. So there's all parallel universes, and I look at wrestling companies the same way. A lot of the guys will have different gimmicks or different alignments, different shticks that they do in different companies. So so the alternate universe rule is very much in effect here between Wrestling Go and FWA, but at FWA, at least at Future Wrestling Australia, the Plastics appear to be no more. Nikki Van Blair turned on Jason Dewhurst. We'll stay tuned to that situation as it develops. But yeah, Tessa Blanchard just tearing shit up over the weekend here in Australia. So that triple threat match turned into a tag match, but then the next day she had a killer main event against Indy Hartwell at MCW's Glow Part 2 at Evie's Disco Diner. That whole show looks absolutely amazing, especially the main event. I'm really looking forward. So Lee and Avery had a street fight, and the main event, Indy Hartwell versus Tessa Blanchard. I'm very interested to see how that plays out when it comes to the Vimeo service, which tends to show up in the Vimeo service a few weeks later. As of recording right now on Thursday morning, MCW's Endgame, which took place last weekend, is also still not on the Vimeo service. But that's okay, that was only a week ago. I'm still waiting for some Nui Pro shows with Jackson Kelly winning the title and what have you to turn up on NuiProPlay.com or PWAPlay.com. I understand as we close in on Christmas season, these things will slow down. It's fine. It's one of those things where, as a consumer, I do give them a little leeway, and I urge everyone to do the same. Like, remember, these are people on the other end of this that, for the most part, these are people who work full-time jobs outside of wrestling, and they still find time to go to the gym every day, train 3 or 4 times a week, wrestle on weekends, and also put in what could really amount to its own full-time job, editing and producing an online product to release for fans like myself who aren't able to get to all the shows. Now, at the same time, though, you do have to think on the other hand, as a consumer, we are paying consumers and we're paying our money, and we can only be expected to be so patient. If the product isn't consistent or relatively high quality, that well, as shallow as it may be at the moment, will dry up. And you don't want that well to dry up. You want that well to fill up. You want to replenish that well. You want as much water in that well, water being consumers at this point, in that well as possible. We want as many people jumping onto these services as possible. So we want them to be as high quality as they can be, and we want the shows to be turned around quite quickly. But this is a problem that goes right up the chain with wrestling companies. Like, it's not just our guys that have this issue. Even bigger companies, I mean, even Demand Progress or RPW On Demand can have scheduled trip-ups with their online stuff, delivering it in a timely manner. It's just the nature of the beast, because, as I said, we're dealing a lot of the time, definitely in Australia, all of the time in Australia. We're dealing with people who have full-time jobs outside of wrestling, and then they are still preparing for their wrestling shows and also dedicating time to, are also dedicating the time to provide this online, like the video editing and all that stuff that goes into producing an online show. Now, it's one of those things where you got to wonder that, they're not supermen, right? They're not. They're just people like you or me. And so in order to get these shows to us in a relatively timely manner, they have to not see their friends and family. They have to not sleep. These are things that can be detrimental to their health. So we need to be understanding of that, but they also need to try to, be understanding of the fact that people are paying for this. So it's kind of two sides to the coin, and we want this all to become a full-time job for people, but life can get in the way. So, I urge to customers patience, and I urge to companies professionalism and getting it out there in a timely manner and responding to people in a timely manner and that kind of thing, because it's very important that these things it's very important that these things are dealt with understanding, I guess. It's very important that these things are dealt with understanding, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is understanding that there's people on each end that have needs and have those needs that need to be met, which is kind of a good way just to live life in general, even outside of wrestling. But that's a whole rant that I've gone on, and I've gone way off script. Continuing on with things that actually happened this week, Ken Shamrock has landed ahead of his big return to professional wrestling this weekend. It's happening in Australia. He's returning to the ring for the first time in I don't know how many years. He's in Australia. Specifically, he's in Melbourne for Battle Championship Wrestling. He held a grappling seminar this week at Hall Carlson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Academy. Oh, that's a mouthful. This is down there in Melbourne, which is really cool. Looked like a good turnout. Meanwhile, over in Perth, the professional Low Key has landed for his match with Jonah Rock this weekend at New Horizons Pro Wrestling. And Mr. Mysterious tells me that seeing him train with the New Horizons crew was something else entirely. Very impressive stuff. I cannot wait to see Low Key versus Jonah Rock for the MLW title. I really hope that one finds its way online soon, because that match is going to be amazing. Moving on from last week, a few announcements that I want to touch on for moving forward. PWA have made some more announcements for Fridays for the Babes, which is very exciting for me. I am headed to Sydney. Flights are booked. Accommodation is booked. When I say accommodation, I'm staying with family. I got family in Sydney. I'm originally from Sydney. You people know this. So I'm heading up to Sydney, and I'm going back to a PWA show. This is going to be my first PWA show in, I want to say 5 years? I feel like it's been like 5 years. It might have only been 3. I might have caught a PWA show the last time I was up in Sydney for a visit, but I don't recall. I don't think I did, because the last time it was sort of around the Christmas, New Year's period, I think. Anyway, all I know is I'm headed back to Sydney for a week, and PWA, it all lined up. I'm going to Fridays for the Babes. I'm very excited about it, and more match announcements have come out this week. So, Madison Eagles versus Michael Spencer has been made official. These two have been going back and forth for months now, and they're finally going to go one-on-one in singles action. We're also going to see Matty Wahlberg versus Jax Jordan. Jax Jordan notably looking to get revenge for the snip of the hair at PWA Coliseum. I am very excited to see this one in person. We also found out this week that the Coliseum winner gets a sword. A sword. We had Jack Bonza on the show a while ago, and he told us that the prize that the winner was going to get was pretty badass. I did not realize when he said it was pretty badass that he meant they were going to get a fucking sword. Do you know how insanely awesome it is? It is the black metal sword, I believe they are calling it. And they even they tweeted out an image today of it, like a playing card with the statistics for the black metal sword. And it says it is a black katana-style sword engraved with the name of an exceptional pro wrestling promotion. Functions as a +1 magical weapon when facing opponents the player has previously defeated. Once per day, grants advantage against run-ins. I thought that was hilarious. I think it'd be awesome if that +1 magical, +1 against opponents the player has previously defeated. If you have a match against someone you've previously defeated and you are the holder of the sword, you only need a 2 count. That's my fan booking for the day. You only need a 2 count in matches if you're the sword holder. No, in all seriousness though, it's freaking amazing. When he said it, when Jack Bonza said it was going to be a badass prize, I assumed that there was going to be like some kick-ass trophy and a title shot. right? I don't know. Maybe I lack imagination when it comes to what badass is, because that's completely not badass. A fucking sword is badass. It's insane. Insane. I'm very excited for this. I'm not going to get to see that, though. That's happening in February, I think, is where the actual winner of Colosseum gets crowned. But I get to see the semifinals, of course. Paris De Silva takes on Jack Bonza, and Mick Moretti takes on Unsocial Jordan in the semifinals. And then, yeah, the fight for black medal. The name of the show makes sense now. The fight for black medal takes place on February 9th. Could we get a Mick Moretti versus Jack Bonza final? I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that's where we're going. We're going to get Mick Moretti versus Jack Bonza. But man, Paris De Silva would look badass carrying around that sword, because it's a katana-style sword. Now that I know what the prize is, I mean, Mick Moretti would be pretty badass with that sword as well. So now, just because of what the prize is, I want it to go to Mick Moretti or Paris De Silva. Sorry, Jack. Sorry, Jordan. Fan of both of your work. But just the look and how it will look in photos and stuff. I'm rooting for Paris and Mick now in this one at Fridays for the Babes. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. Who I'm rooting for doesn't matter. What does matter is PWA Fridays for the Babes. It's coming up next week. Very exciting stuff. We'll talk more about it next week, of course. In other news, Bruce Pritchard's Something to Wrestle podcast is coming to Australia for some live shows. So that's happening with Destroy All Lines, who, as a pop punk kid, Destroy All Lines are one of my favorite touring companies. They bring out some badass tours. I'm really looking forward to Story So Far and Basement, but that's for another podcast probably. They have some wrestling fans among their ranks though, because they were instrumental in bringing New Japan to our shores last year, and I'm hoping next year as well. This year, next year. We're getting towards the end of the year. It's all getting confusing, but 2018 they were responsible for bringing New Japan out, and hopefully 2019 we get New Japan as well. I've heard around the grapevine, I've heard February is being thrown around, but nothing is confirmed for that one yet. What is confirmed is Destroy All Lines are bringing Bruce Pritchard out to do some live Something to Wrestle podcasts in March. That's on the 22nd, the 23rd, and the 24th. Those shows are at the Factory Theatre in Sydney, the Thornbury Theatre in Melbourne, and the Triffid in Brisbane, respectively. Again, no Adelaide, makes me sad, but this is still very exciting to see more and more wrestling-related events taking place here in Australia. Makes me very, very happy. Melbourne City Wrestling have announced that Jimmy Havoc is coming back to Melbourne for the first show of the year in 2019. That one is called Vendetta. Takes place at the Thornbury Theatre on January 12th. We will let you know more as the event approaches. No matches are announced as of yet. We don't know what Jimmy Havoc's going to be doing. We don't know what anyone's going to be doing. So we'll let you know more as the event approaches. Also, something that we've been keeping our eye on, Pro Wrestling Darwin, a company started by some EPW alumni up in Darwin. Very excited to have some wrestling coming to the Northern Territory. Their training is starting soon at the PCYC in Nucky Lagoon on Friday evenings. So, if you are interested, please send an email. If you're in the Northern Territory, of course, if you're in Darwin and you are interested in training to become a professional wrestler, one of the first in the Northern Territory, please send an email to prowrestlingdarwin@australiamail.com or contact them on Facebook. Get in touch with them on Facebook and let them know that you're interested, and there are still some spots available. Now, last few things I want to talk about. Studio Superstars. One Fall Entertainment's live extravaganza has begun. Now, I record these, I know you're listening to this, it's Friday or Saturday or Sunday or whatever you're listening to this, but I record these on Thursday during the day. Now, One Fall Entertainment have put their shows at a very inconvenient time for me because they're on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so I'll get to talk about the Wednesday shows on my Aussie Grapps shows on Fridays, but I won't get to talk about the Thursday shows because, unfortunately, I can't see into the future. So it hasn't happened yet as I record this. I know it has happened as you listen, but as I record, it has not happened. So all I can talk about is the Wednesday show, and what an experience it was. There was good, there was bad, and there was absolutely some ugly. The live stream went live early, and I was treated to the wonderful experience of watching the Australian wrestling legend himself, Crackerjack, pose for the camera and check himself out in the monitor and admire his own tan. It was highly entertaining, even when the cameras are off. Well, I mean, the cameras were on, but he didn't know it. Even when he doesn't know the cameras are on, Crackerjack is Crackerjack. He is the mad bastard, and he is very entertaining. So that was fun. Anyone else who got treated to that spectacle would probably vouch for it as well. It was amazing. It's definitely worth the price of admission alone. Just Crackerjack. Just Crackerjack is worth the price of admission. These shows are $10 each or $50 for the entire package of 6 shows across the next 3 weeks. But obviously, as evidenced by the fact that they went live before they were supposed to, we can see there are some technical issues. Now, the shows are being put on by students at RMI TV, and this is sort of an avenue for them to gain exposure and experience in live event broadcasting. So there's going to be some hiccups when they were crossing, for example, from the commentary desk over to Studio B. Things got better as the night went on, but there were there were technical issues. The crossing over was a little awkward. Sometimes the timing was off. They missed their cues. The commentators, Crackerjack and Smack Daddy, who did a pretty good job, they're sitting there sort of confused, not sure what's going on. I don't know if they could hear what was happening in their headsets or what, but when they're crossing over to the other studio, then you get a little audio leak and you can hear the people in the other studio getting ready to be like, okay, don't forget to do this. Yeah, we're going live. All right, we're going. And then you'd see a camera zoomed in on a face by accident. Just little things like that that make it look very unprofessional, unfortunately. But the wrestling itself and the performance put in by the wrestlers was fantastic. Even if some of the matches were a little short, I'll say that. I definitely think some of the matches could have done with some extra time, but the main event, Jonah Rock vs. Adam Brooks vs. Robbie Eagles vs. Dowie James vs. Gino Gambino vs. Logan Gray for the inaugural One Fall Openweight Championship was an amazing match. It was a scramble match. I'm a big fan of scrambles. And yeah, the show really lived and died by the main event. The main event was incredible. Very well-paced 30-minute match. Fantastic stuff. Unfortunately, Gino Gambino took a superplex from the top rope, which involved everyone in the match, and he took a bit of a bad bump. He was knocked out. He managed to roll out of the ring, call for help. He is not going to be able to wrestle on tonight's show, which is unfortunate. We wish all the best to Gino Gambino. We hope it's nothing serious. We hope it's not a concussion or anything like that, but he was knocked out, and he was being evaluated by the One Fall staff. One Fall did have medics on hand ready to evaluate, and they were doing the concussion tests and everything. Looks like everything's fine there. Still waiting for word, but Gino did tweet out about it that he was knocked out, and unfortunately he won't be able to compete tonight. That aside, the main event was fantastic. It was really fun. Robbie Eagles becoming the inaugural One Fall Entertainment Champion. What a week it's been for Robbie Eagles. He becomes the World Series Wrestling Champion on the weekend, and then in the middle of the week, in what he says was his first time wrestling on a Wednesday. I don't think it was, Robbie. I'm pretty sure you wrestled on a Wednesday in New Japan, but he was very excited about the fact that it's the middle of the week, and we're having live professional wrestling in Australia broadcast into homes. It's happening in Melbourne, but I'm in Adelaide watching it as it happens with my daughter. My daughter was there. She saw Robbie Eagles for the first time, and she started doing the pose, man. She started doing the sniper thing because it was that entertaining. So there was definitely good to be had, and I think people should check it out because it is support the boys. That's the big thing. Support the boys, even if the production elements aren't quite up to par, and we expect it to get better. I spoke to Chris from One Fall, and he said, look, it's on me. It's our first time broadcasting, and you know, they are students, but it's on me. I've got a lot of work to do today to make sure that tonight's broadcast is better, and hopefully it is. I'm looking forward to tonight's broadcast. I'm looking forward to seeing where they go from episode 1 to episode 6 in 3 weeks, seeing just how much this crew can get it together. I love an underdog, man. I love a plucky underdog, and I love seeing them rise to the occasion, and I really think that they have the tools here that they could rise to the occasion. Just a few things need to be tweaked here and there, but the in-ring product, they have the talent. They absolutely have the talent, and the wrestlers put on a fantastic performance. The cheesy backstage promos were great in a way. They have their own charm about them. I don't know if you need them as much as the in-ring product, though. The in-ring product is brilliant, and I'm a big fan of it. And I definitely recommend getting it just so you can support the boys and see live Aussie wrestling in the middle of a week. You get home from work, and you get to watch live Robbie Eagles do his thing. Like tonight, Robbie Eagles versus Logan Gray, a dream match in Australian professional wrestling. It's already happened. When you listen to this, it was last night. But Logan Gray versus Robbie Eagles, it's a dream match. Jonah Rock versus Adam Brooks. So you can tell the wrestling itself, the cards are fantastic and definitely worth checking out for the $10 or less that it costs to see those live. I will drop a link in the show notes so you can always check that one out. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, Underworld Wrestling. My kind of company. I love Underworld Wrestling. I cannot speak highly enough about them as a company. Sorry, Adam wouldn't like me calling it a company. As a project. I cannot speak highly enough about them as a project, and I cannot speak highly enough about them as an entertainment product. Very, very entertaining stuff that Underworld have been putting out. And they have announced their season finale. Filming is taking place on March 9th at a secret, hidden location north of Melbourne. I'm hoping I can get over for this one because I really, really want to see this one live. The Claw HQ, it seems, is being moved. They're no longer in the same venue. It seems like the Claw HQ is being moved. I'm wondering if this will be addressed within the story for episodes 4, 5, and 6. Underworld don't strike me as the type of place to not have a story reason for something like this happening, and the social media is already on it as well. So Lord Mark Williamson has been seen fleeing Claw HQ after the events of the last show. So I have still avoided spoilers for the events of the last show. I've seen a few things like Sagat Pyro and what have you, but I have avoided spoilers for the most part for the shows. Plus, of course, there's the vignettes that get added to the television product that we aren't privy to when we watch live. So, but I do know that On the Turnbuckle, the boys at On the Turnbuckle this week sat down with the leader of the Claw, Lord Mark Williamson, and they've told me that he addresses the new venue. So, and Lord Mark tends to do everything from a story perspective, which is brilliant. I love Lord Mark. So definitely worth checking out On the Turnbuckle this week to see what's up with that venue change. But the season finale for Underworld Wrestling is one to get excited about for sure. I also saw a post from the man behind Underworld Wrestling on Facebook this week about the tapings for the season finale. He mentioned that as he was finalizing his dates for the year, one of the dates clashed with another company, Gold Class Wrestling, also in Melbourne. And he reached out to them, and they had a chat, and Gold Class Wrestling released some of their talent to Underworld so that the Underworld stories can be told in the manner that they need to be told. This is amazing to hear. So anyone who listens to this show weekly or daily knows how much I am all about the teamwork, all about building the community up, and a big part of that is working together. Companies working with each other to make sure that we get the best outcomes for talent and fans. That's where we need to be. It's really, really encouraging to see stuff like this happening. From everything I hear, from everything I've experienced as well with Underworld, they are a company who they are a project who understand that, and it's really, really easy to get behind a place like Underworld when that's their philosophy. And of course, Gold Class Wrestling, who I gotta be honest with you, I didn't even know Gold Class Wrestling existed. I had not heard of them. As an Adelaide guy who grew up in Sydney, I know there's a lot of wrestling in Melbourne, but some fly under the radar, and this is one that until this week has flown under the radar for me. But now I do know they exist, and in a really, really positive way. If their attitude is one of working together with others and building up the scene and doing what is best for the fans and best for the workers, as opposed to thinking me, bottom line, me, money, me, then because when companies do that, what they do is they close off to others and they say, no, our guys work here and that's it. There's nothing else that they can do, and there becomes this weird loyalty. We talked about it with Andy Faust last week, and I'm going to talk about it with Craven in a minute. So it's becoming a theme on this podcast. But what I want to say is, Gold Class Wrestling, if you haven't heard of them already, I haven't seen any of their wrestling, but looking at some of the talent they have that work there, and having read this story this week about what happened when their dates clashed with Underworld Wrestling, I'm definitely going to check them out as soon as I can, and I encourage anyone else to do the same. Give them a like on Facebook, all that good stuff. But yeah, as I mentioned, it's becoming a theme on our show. We want to build the scene up. We really want to build the scene up and be positive, be a positive force, and be encouraging everything in Australian professional wrestling. And part of that is working together. Part of that is letting the talent do the things they need to do to grow. And we talked about it with Andy Faust last week, and he talked about how he's not sure if it's just the egos of bookers or what it is that prevents that. But we talked about his hopes for South Australian pro wrestling and how he hopes that can change. And that was kind of more on a promotional level and a promoter level that we were encouraging change there. This week I talked to Craven, who crossed company lines in Perth in something that was somewhat of a taboo move. He went from wrestling with AAW to wrestling with Schwa and then EPW and training with them as well. And he says, I mean, I'll let him tell you, but it's something that I want every professional wrestler in Australia to listen to this interview, because the message he has is one that needs to be heard. So let's have a chat with Craven, and then after that, I will hit you up with everything that is happening this week near you. Take 2. I am joined at this time by the Australian sensation, the leader of the Swanton Squad, Craven. How are you, Craven?
Hey, mate. Thanks for having me. Take 2.
Take two. Yeah, we've had a little bit behind the curtain, we've had some technical difficulties. Technology, as you said to me privately, is wonderful when it works.
I know. Or when, you happen to have great internet, which I currently don't. So,
yeah,
let's try it this way.
Me either. So we've had some really big storms down here, and my internet has been really spotty. And it's generally spotty anyway because South Australia is one of the forgotten states. I'm going to assume it's the same for you over there in Western Australia.
Yeah, see, what they don't know is we're actually sending, like, pigeons and owls really quickly to record this podcast. So, let's hope it works.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Cool.
Alrighty.
Let's try this again.
So let's start where we started last time with your origin story. So the Australian Sensation,
Yes.
that's the nickname that you've got, and I always think whenever I see it on posters, it's kind of funny that you're the Australian Sensation. Like when you're overseas, that makes perfect sense to me. But having that name in Australia, because everyone's Australian.
This is true, but you hit the nail on the head. So there is a story that we'll go over. My name Craven, that actually came from about 15 years ago when, I rocked up to my first wrestling show at a PCYC. It was in a boxing ring. I was super excited, and there was about 7 people in the crowd, and I could probably tell you 6 of their names. And I thought I was going to be this big time wrestler. I'd made it, and I got to my curtain. I gave him my music track, and I looked at the promoter, and he said, "What's your wrestling name?" And I said, "I don't know." And so the guy that managed the PCY at the time, he was standing there as well, behind the counter, and he took his wallet out of his pocket, and I think it was like a Nokia 5110, like his big mobile phone, and a packet of Craven A cigarettes. And I looked at the packet of cigarettes. I said, "Just call me Craven, and we'll change it later." That was 15 years ago. So that's how I got stuck with the Craven name. But the Australian Sensation part is back in 2009 when I first went over to the United States. I wrestled for some little company it was Indiana. I can't even remember the company's name. It was somewhere in Indiana, and they put on the flyer, debuting all the way from Australia, the Australian Sensation Craven. And I saw it on a flyer, and I was like, I love that. I'm just going to run with it. And I've sort of used it ever since on all my merchandise, everywhere. So that's how I got stuck with that name.
Right, and it's so happy accidents both times around, because you're still Craven and you're still the Australian Sensation.
That I am, sir. So yes, it was great. So it just sort of worked out.
All right, so this time around, I'm going to change the order of discussion this time around, just to throw you off your game, just so you can't rehearse everything. No, so this weekend, you have a big show at FWA Diamond Edition, featuring your friend Tessa Blanchard is in town.
She is. I think she just got on a plane. I think, by the time this comes out, like you said, show's probably done and dusted. But I think she just got on the plane from LA. So she's on her way to Australia now. She is in town, which will be fantastic.
Nice. Yeah. So as people listen to this, you touched on it there. As people listen, the show will have come and gone because this is coming out a week later. But as we talk, it's this weekend, and you're coming to the aid of 5-Star Flash, who is the promoter over there at FWA. Spoilers. And you guys actually go back a fair way, right?
We do. So when I first was not first, but in the early days of All Action Wrestling, 5-Star Flash was one of the younger guys there, and he was wrestling there and training at the school. So I knew him from then. We have kept in contact in the form of followed each other on social media and stuff. And here there, I've sent him a message or whatnot and said, it looks like you're doing well after he moved over east to Sydney. So but I am coming to his aid because I believe in the FWA he's having a bit of trouble. So he reached out and said, "Well, hey, do you want to come over and wrestle at the FWA?" And I said, "Well, of course I do." And that's how that all came together. So it's going to be a good show. I can't wait for it. I'm actually really excited.
Yeah. So from what I understand, so it's a tag team match, and you guys are taking on Debauchery, Parker Tomas, and
Ricky South.
Right, who is one of the greatest up-and-coming wrestlers in the country, in my opinion.
Ricky South, if he is acting nicely, which obviously he isn't in the FWA, off record, is the man. I've met Ricky before, and he is fantastic. So he is so he just needs to get his head in order, I think, because I'm just gonna have to come and beat some sense into him, and then we'll be fine. But yes, Ricky is the man.
Right.
So he's a great worker.
Yeah,
he's a great worker.
So you touched on, all those years ago when you broke in was over in AAW. So what is your origin story in terms of, we've got the origin story of the name. What's the origin story of you as the man becoming a wrestler?
Okay, so I've been watching wrestling for as long as I can remember. I started watching wrestling as a very, very young kid. I used to watch, well, my all-time favorite is The Ultimate Warrior. I used to love Warrior because he was colorful. If you've ever met me or seen me in photos, you know that I'm not exactly the guy that goes out in, a black jeans and a black, and plain clothing. Yeah, I'll have bright red shoes on, and I'm always a bit over the top and out there. That's just me. It's how I like to live my life. I mean, I've got full color tattoos everywhere. That's why I was so attracted to the Warrior when he started wrestling. He was this big, muscly superhero that now that I know how to wrestle, or I like to tell myself I know how to work, he probably wasn't the greatest. But back then when I was a kid, when I used to get angry at my mom, or someone used to tell me off, I used to shake a chair or shake the table because I was a warrior and I could beat you up. That was the bottom line. So that's how I started watching wrestling. It used to be whatever I could get my hands on when I was a kid. Obviously, we never used to have great television coverage over it when I was young. So whatever I could get my hands on when I was at my nonna's house, which is grandmother in Italian, because spoiler alert, maybe the Australian sensation, but my mum was actually born in Italy.
Yeah.
I used to watch wrestling. So that's how I fell in love with it, because these guys were superheroes on TV and I wanted to be these guys. How I became a wrestler is in school. Obviously in Australia, there's no wrestling class. There's no professional wrestling schools, especially 15 years ago. There may be now. There wasn't that. And if there was, it wasn't very well known of. So I just started looking around as much as I can. And I found the guy by the name of Andrew Carter, who is known as the Shark, who is the ex-promoter of All Action Wrestling. We became friends because we were both, 15, 16 at the time. And he said, well, I'm starting a wrestling company. And I said, well, I want to be involved. And that was how that happened. So he started, back then he actually started a company, which is nothing more short of a backyard company. And it was called XWOW, Extreme World of Wrestling, before it transitioned into AAW. And I started wrestling there. And the only other company in Perth at the time was EPW, but it was ECW at the time. I think it was Explosive Coastal Wrestling,
right?
Which was obviously formed by Davis Storm and all those guys back in the day. So I just wanted to be a wrestler, and that's how I sort of got in. So I got into the wrestling, and I became very, very good friends with Andrew Carter at that time. When AAW formed was just shortly before, Andrew, or the Shark, went over and got trained by Lance Storm. So he then came back, and then we had access to a factory and a ring that he had purchased, and starting to build this company. And then for 3 to 4 months, every night of the week, Andrew would take me one-on-one most nights of the week. And after his Lance Storm school, he would write down what he learned that day, and then he would teach me what he learned. So my first official training was secondhand Lance Storm training from a guy that had just been to the school. So I was never actually professionally trained all those years ago.
Right.
If that makes sense. So that's how I broke into the business until about 2009, when I thought, you know what, this is it. This is what I want to do. And wrestling doesn't pay the bills in Australia. We're getting there. We just spoke about this. We're starting to be on the uptrends. It's Australia-wide, worldwide. There's a boom at the moment, and it's getting there. It's starting to be a lot more common now. It's on an uptrend. 15 years ago, you had no hope in hell of wrestling in Australia paying a mortgage. You had none.
Right.
There was no promoters that was going to pay you a wage for the talent that was around, because it just wasn't there. So I thought, I got to go to America. And that's when I decided, well, I'm going to go over to America. And I met a gentleman online through Andrew, who he had previously met because he just got back from Lance Storm. So through a connection here, there, and everywhere, I met a gentleman by the name of Derek Sharp, who currently now owns a company called Curtain Jerker Designs, who does a lot of the graphics for the wrestling, the independent scene. He does a lot of companies in Australia as well. He's based out of Chicago, just out of Chicago in Indiana.
Right.
And he does all the graphics for House of Hardcore when they come over. He does BCW in Melbourne. He does a ton in America. But, the biggest feds that he probably does is Warriors Wrestling and Freelance Pro Wrestling in Chicago. And he's done heaps of cool stuff. But I met him online before he had this business. And I said, hey, I'm coming over. I want to give this wrestling a shot. Do you got any recommendations for me to where I could stay, you know, some cheap motels. I only want to be around there for a month or whatever. And he said, hey, man, you can just come and stay with me. So here's, 18-year-old me. I get a plane ticket. And I was only meant to go over for 3 weeks and just go and stay with this guy that I'd never met. Probably not the smartest idea. But, go stay in someone's house that I never met and try and get on the road and wrestle. That 4 weeks turned into 11 months straight in the US of just wrestling at different feds. And that's when the whole Australian Sensation thing on the fly happened.
Yeah.
Because Derek had just started out doing graphics for these small indie feds. And he was like, well, I've got this guy from Australia coming. He's pretty good and stuff. And then he got me on these shows, and then I just started building from there. And then, that's how Craven became Craven and the Australian Sensation.
Right. So it's very, very DIY, very punk rock.
Definitely.
Yeah, which I dig. Like, I mean, obviously, in this day and age, it's much easier to go out and get trained, and so so I wouldn't recommend anyone copy that style of how to get into wrestling now. It's much easier to get in now, but you're talking early 2000s, right? So it was a very different world back then.
Yeah. So I mean, it definitely was. I mean, let's talk about the fact, the knowledge that is in. I can't speak for all states because I there's too many to rattle off. There is some incredible knowledge in this country or just over the pond in New Zealand. You know what I mean? With the Farley Dojo and stuff. But right now in this country alone, let's talk about my state in WA, my home state, which honestly, I don't spend a lot of time here anymore, but there is so much experience here. And the two there's 3 schools here. The 2 schools that I'm involved with, the knowledge in those schools alone in the Southern Hemisphere Wrestling Live Creator Wrestler Workshop or the EPW School of Pro Wrestling, you've got guys like Jared Slate as a head trainer at the Creator Wrestler Workshop, excellence, like 10 years in the business, excellent Storm, done a multitude of things, wrestled everywhere in this state and interstate. And then over the other end of town, you've got the EPW School of Pro Wrestling, where need I say more about Davis Storm or Davian Slater as head trainers there, Tyler Jacobs? Do I need I say more? Like, those guys are phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So getting into wrestling these days, my God, if I had that opportunity 15 years ago, it would be a different story because I thrive off those guys now. Like, if you ever get a chance to talk to Damian Slater, I probably annoy him more than anything because I will text him and I will say, hey man, want to go train? Have you got time for a one-on-one training this week? I want to learn this. And he is like an encyclopedia. Like, and that is the God's honest truth. Like, Slater is like and he'll be like, cool, we'll go down here, we'll work on this sort of stuff. Or he'll message me and say, training this week, if you want to do a one-on-one, anything you want to learn on. And his phenomenal teacher, Stormy's the same. Davis Storm is just fantastic when it comes to that stuff. And then over at the Creator Wrestler Workshop, Slate is just Slate. And then I know that the other guys that I've got helping out with Felix Young and Warship, phenomenal trainers, dude. Like, so yeah, you're exactly right. Don't copy my style. If you want to get wrestling training, there's plenty of opportunities to do it now, and you can just get their world of experience. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, down in Melbourne, you got Carlo's School, you've got MCW have just opened up in Sydney, you got PWA, you got Australian Pro Wrestling Gym, you got down here, you got Wrestle Rampage, Riot City Wrestling. There's a million of these places now. So yeah, you don't need to do the backyard stuff. You don't none of that stuff anymore.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
We are all WWE fans here. It's why we're here, listening to this show and spending inordinate amounts of hours consuming, complaining, and just generally eating, sleeping, and breathing professional wrestling. But if you want to take that to the next level, the only place to do it is WrestleMania 35 in the city so nice that they named it twice New York. And our new friends at All Aussie Travelers are going to help you make that happen in the best way possible. They are new to the wrestling travel game, granted, but they have over 15 years experience in sports and event tours between the US and Australia, so you know you're in good hands. They want to offer you an exclusive WrestleMania package, including return flights to the USA, 6 nights at the New Yorker Hotel right next to Times Square. And the thing that sets these packages apart are the VIP suites that AAT have secured for WrestleMania. So that's, of course, the Raw after WrestleMania. So not only are you going to go to the Hall of Fame, not only are you going to go to WrestleMania 35, but for NXT TakeOver, SmackDown Live, and the Raw immediately after WrestleMania that next night, you are going to be in an exclusive VIP suite that is not normally available to the public. But AAT, they got it locked down. They got it waiting for you with your name on it. Your own private entrance, your own private toilets and bar, as well as an unparalleled view in the most comfortable seats in the house. You can experience WrestleMania weekend like never before, all at really competitive prices. So head over to All Aussie Travellers on Facebook, hit that like button, send him a message, send an email to Jack, that's JAAK, at allaussie.com.au, and let them know the B Plus sent you.
Hey, Greg, curious question for you, man. Have you been shopping recently?
I have not.
Mate, well, I've got some good news for you. I know you're not a big fan of crowds, as most of us here at the B Plus aren't. Have you heard of Threadbox?
I have heard of Threadbox.
Man, then you would know how good they actually are. I mean, I just received my first crate, and holy moly, I'm amazed. Guys, if you're listening, go check out threadbox.com.au, and they have everything from hats to socks to shirts to pants. It's fantastic. With email to a personalized stylist and customizable crates, it's honestly one of the best things I've had. I don't know about you, Greg, but I really enjoy it.
I got a crate the other day, and they gave me new jeans, a couple of new shirts, and the cool thing is, one of the shirts, I tried it on, and it was a little bit long for me, and I thought, this accentuates how short I am in person. And so I sent them an email, and I was just like, hey, this shirt, I feel like it makes me look really short because I'm kind of short. And they were like, send it back. We'll give you something else next month, like an extra thing. So I'm going to send that shirt back. And then next month, they're going to send me out something else. And I said to them, I've got lots of shirts. And they were like, well, we'll send you some accessories. And that's how Threadbox do it. It's kind of fantastic.
See, how good's that? And with our special code, the B Plus 15 at checkout, actually saves all our fans 15% at checkout on their first box. How cool is that?
Yeah, so head to threadbox.com.au today and use the code the B Plus 15 to get your first box as soon as you can. You touched on some stuff there, so across the pond as well, right? Like over in New Zealand, we've also got a wealth of promotions that I'm just starting to realize around like Southeast Asia, right? Like OWE is popping off over in China. You recently were in Singapore.
I was, and it was fantastic. Like the guys there, and this is not a knock at them. SPW Andrew Tang. And his partner, he's not a wrestler, but he's more of a silent partner that run that promotion, were one of the best hosts that I've ever had. So that came around with, and I linked up with Andrew, and he offered me the booking, and I said, get to Singapore, and we spoke about all this. He was the best host, whether it was him or he sent some of his talent out. They look after you like crazy, and the crowd there, the pavilion that they sell out is absolutely packed, and they thrive on wrestling. I'm talking like you would lock up and go in and do a hip toss, and you literally, like how I explained it to the boys is you do a hip toss and you'll get a holy shit chant. They just live and breathe wrestling. It was phenomenal. So that was amazing, and I can't wait to go back. I think I'm back there early next year.
That sounds incredible. As well, I've noticed the Philippine Wrestling Revolution, they have some good stuff going on. It looks like the whole region, like all of, whatever you want to call the region, Oceania, Southeast Asia, Pacifica, whatever. Like, things are really starting to pop off here. And do you think more Australians should be looking to that region as opposed to, I mean, obviously everyone has the goal, the UK, the US, Japan. Should we be looking at those smaller Southeast Asian countries?
Look, the best bit of advice I give to anybody now, and I don't consider myself to be anybody but someone who loves doing this for the love of this business. What I was taught, this is beyond my training, because I actually ended up doing a couple of camps over at Florida Championship Wrestling. So nice. I've done a couple of times, and the best bit of advice I got from the guys there is, when you want experience, this was Steve Kern or Skinner back in the day that said that. He said, wrestle anywhere you can that's not going to put you in danger. So if you can get a booking, that's pretty reputable, whether it's in front of 5 people or 500,000 people, if it's not going to put you in danger, get as much mat time as possible. And that's what I say to anybody. And whether it's investing in yourself, whether you're at the point where people are going to bring you over here and there, do as much as you can. Because if you love the sport, it won't be like you're doing anything. You're not doing anything for free, because you're getting exposure, you're adding to your resume. If you're not at the stage of getting paid, we don't know where that is yet. I believe all of us should get some sort of remuneration for putting our body on the line if there's tickets being sold. But if you're solely just getting photos and footage and experience to market yourself, your social media, and try and obtain more bookings, then it's worth it for you. And yeah, that's the only advice I can say.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And somewhere else that you're doing that is in Mexico. You're actually heading there, as people listen to this weekend, you're heading there.
Yes, I'm flying out so I go to Sydney. I go to Sydney Saturday night, and then Sunday I'm back in Perth. Well, obviously we've got the WSW tour coming to Perth, which is fantastic. It was obviously really hard to get a spot on those shows, but it's what the World Series is doing for Australian wrestling is phenomenal. Like bringing this world card, like the super IndyCar talent over to help obviously put on a show and boost the likelihood and the awareness of wrestling in this country is fantastic. So I'm actually coming back simply just to go to that show. And then I fly back out again on Monday morning. I'm actually going to Orlando first. I'm in Orlando for a few days. We'll probably pop into Pro Wrestling 2.0 and then back to Mexico on Saturday night.
Absolutely. And so you're the first Australian to work for The Crash. How did that one come about?
Okay, so there is a bit of an origin story there. I would love to tell you to be complete, but I'm a very honest person. I would love to tell you that I got that of blood, sweat, tears, hard work, and I'm the coolest person in the room type of skill. That's not how that happens. So back in 2009, when I moved over to the US, I wrestled for a fed in Chicago called, I think it was Chicago Style Wrestling at the time.
So this is in that 11-month stint that you referenced earlier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was in the locker room and I knew nobody. And I noticed a guy that looked like a skinny Matt Hardy in the corner of the room, putting tights on with a Puerto Rican flag on his tights, not talking to anybody either. And I went over to him and I was like, hey man, hey mate, I'm kind of new here. Mind if I just sit on the floor next to you and get changed and talk? And he looked at me, he's like, brother, I don't know anybody here too. What's your name? And that guy's name was 450, Mr. 450 at the time, or John Unett. He now goes by the name of Mecha Wolf. And from there, we sort of formed a friendship, and we have been very close or best friends ever since. Obviously, if you know the indie wrestling scene, Mecha Wolf, John here has gone on to do amazing things. He's worked the Fed, he's worked Impact, he's worked all over Puerto Rico, Mexico, and things like that. And he is actually a regular at the Crash. So when I was over, I said, I'm coming to the US. I want to do a bit more of a tour, a bit more wrestling. He's like, let's go to Mexico. I was like, you're not going to get me into Mexico. He's like, do me a favor, get me your best promo footage, send me in your best work, and I'll do what I can. All right. So I did it, sent in my resume, didn't hear anything. Not going to happen. Woke up one day for a Facebook notification, and John said, and all it said was a message from John, and he said, welcome to Mexico, brother, with a love heart. And that's when I was first booked at the Crash. Nice. So that's how that came about. So yes, this is what I say to everybody. I was super fortunate and lucky to get an opportunity at the Crash, which if you've seen any of their shows, you've got 6,000 to 7,000 people in that auditorium. It's not a small deal. It's an amazing experience. After my match, either the wrestling guys were looking over me or whatnot, but I must have really impressed somebody, because after that match, the promoter sat down to me and he said, when are you coming back? And I said, well, let's hook it up for, let me see if I can come every few months or whatever. And that's how that happened. And then I'm back in December, and then I'll let you know after Saturday night, if it goes well again, when I'll be back there again. So that's how that all came about.
Amazing. That's awesome. So you popping up in Mexico, Singapore, all over the place. It's fantastic. I wanted to go back a while, though. I wanted to rewind. We talked about it when we talked the first time, but we haven't talked about it here, so we have to touch on it. The training. You touched on it briefly. Recently, you've sort of broken across company lines, so to speak, and you started out in that bubble with AAW, and you've since started training with Schwa and with EPW. And that's kind of something that's a little bit taboo in Australian wrestling, breaking those company lines. So I wanted to sort of talk about how that came about and what your thought process was behind all that.
Okay, so back to the origin story of how I said Andrew Carter, who, in all honesty, we're still friends, but we don't see each other nowhere near as much as we used to. When he trained me, he didn't charge me a cent for all that time and money he put into me, and he had just spent all this money in going over to Lance Storm. He, spoiler alert, if you don't already know, used to be the promoter of All Action Wrestling. So because he gave me all that time and effort and, essentially gave me my first bump in a ring, he's the one who got the ring and everything else. I said to him all those years ago, I said, I'm going to be loyal to you in WA. In WA, as long as you are promoting All Action Wrestling, I'm just going to work here. That's just me being loyal and me being a friend. Until, so I was not stuck, forcefully stuck. I wasn't exclusively stuck, but by my own will, I was stuck in this bubble in WA pro wrestling and Australian pro wrestling for that fact. I don't think a lot of people knew who I was or what I'd done, or even if I known that I'd even been to the States. It's just since I started doing a lot more with other companies, I started researching and be like, oh wow, he's actually been to quite a few places and wrestled and done quite a few different things. So I was in that bubble until one day, like I said, I'm really good friends with 50, and he turned around and he said to me, 450 said, look, I know you're a loyal friend, but these guys aren't paying your mortgage, they're not paying your bills, they don't own you, and I respect what you're doing, but you don't owe anybody anything. You can't just wrestle once or twice a month and expect to get better just by training and not getting out and getting more exposure or having to fly to another country. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So firstly, like I said, I broke that mold by approaching the Southern Hemisphere Wrestling Alliance, and I approached Tom and I said, or he called me or I called him, I can't remember. We got talking at some point and I said, listen, I want to work with you guys. I want to do something. And Tom at that time said, you come into us, you just become part of us. You don't come in because you've done stuff and come up above us. You don't come in below us. You just come in and be a part of us. And that's when it all started. So that's when I broke that sort of that invisible company line that we were talking about. That's when I broke that mold and debuted as well. And then I thought, you know what? I literally, when I'm in WA, I live 5 minutes from EPW. I mean, I've always had respect for Storm, especially David Storm. Like, I've been a fan. I've been a fan. I think he's a phenomenal worker. I've always had respect for the top guys there. And I thought, you know what, they're literally 5 minutes away. I can run there in 15 minutes if I want to jog to training, or I can drive there in 5. I said, I'm just going to do it. And I messaged him and I said, I'm going to go in. And I went in, picked up my application form and said, I just want to come and train here. I'm not coming here as Craven, in quotation marks. I'm coming here just to hone my craft and learn the skills of pro wrestling. And you know what? Like I said to you before, the only regret that I have is that I didn't do it 5 years earlier. Like that decision to break those invisible company lines was the best thing that I ever did. It's not knocking where I came from, but the experience, the exposure, the knowledge that I've got from all these different places is just phenomenal, and I'm so thankful for it. So it was scary. It was a scary thing to do. It was like joining a new school, being the new kid on the block. You know, you never know what's starting a new job. You don't know what it's going to hold, but it was the best thing. And the only regret I have now, we're talking 2 years ago now, 18 months ago now, is I didn't do it sooner. Yeah, I waited too long.
Yeah. Right. And so you would give that advice to anyone else who's thinking like, oh, I'd like to, but I don't want to hurt my friends' feelings. I don't want to, get any heat with the boys that we work with here at the place that we're at or whatever. Would you recommend sort of, not being afraid to, like, you can stay loyal, but still branch out?
Of course. Like, get as much. It sounds so silly now when I think about it, but if you want to teach yourself something, if you're studying anything, whether it's pro wrestling, whether it's becoming a doctor, you don't stick to one textbook, do you? You don't. If you've got resources and things available for you, and you're able to use them just by putting in your own effort and time, then if you're hungry, I say go for it. I really do. That would be the advice I give anybody. Trust me, it's easier said than done, especially when you've got relationships and friendships and, like you said, heat with the boys, and there's this stigma of exclusivity and blah 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 blah. At the end of the day, if you love this business, that would be my advice to you. It really would be. Just go in there, be humble, and just learn as much as you can, because everybody in this business, doesn't matter who you are, has something to offer. Whether it's, if you're really, really terrible, how not to wrestle or how not to hurt somebody, or if you're a world-class athlete, how you want to inspire to be. Everybody has something to take from this business.
Yeah, that was an amazing analogy, by the way. I'd never even thought of that. But if I tried to hand in an academic text at uni, if I tried to hand in one of my essays and only had one source on the source list, like, exactly. No, they'd kick you out almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty insane.
So,
yeah. So you've debuted now with Schwa, and spoiler alert, you're the champion in Schwa.
Yeah. So I debuted in Schwa about just over 12 months ago. And then it was I don't know. I guess the promoter saw something in that, and I just got my way up there. I'm not sure, but yes, I'm currently very privileged to be holding the SHWA Heavyweight Championship at the moment. So I am very privileged, and headlining Ascension, should Don accept my challenge, we will be headlining Ascension, which is, for all respect, their biggest show of the year, and that's coming up on December 15th. Right,
so December 15th, closing out the year for wrestling here in Australia, as far as I can tell, looking at calendars and things.
Yep.
With hopefully with the Don.
Yes.
Who has had a banger of a year himself.
Oh, phenomenal. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely that's one to look forward to. I wanted to ask as well, House of Hardcore, you were originally slated, because they came around for a tour recently, you were originally slated to be part of that 6-man tables match with Bully Ray and Tommy Dreamer against the Spirit Squad, but you ended up teaming with Muhammad Ali Vaez against the Untouchables instead. What's the story there?
Look, there was a million things that happened backstage. I can't tell you what exactly happened, but if you noticed that night, there was if you read the reviews on the show, there was a couple of talent that I'm not going to mention names, but there was some talent that was sick, international talent that was sick. Some things had to get changed around. There was some talent that didn't get let into the country that had to get changed around. Unfortunately, when you're the local talent, doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get bumped and shuffled around. And you know what? Obviously, if you ask me honestly, did I want to team with Bubba Ray Dudley? Who doesn't? You know what I mean? Did I have dreams that Bubba Ray was going to push me in the chest and tell me to get the tables? Which wrestling fan doesn't want that? I'd be lying. Yeah. I'd be lying to you if I brushed it off and was like, "Oh yeah, it was nothing." No, of course that hurt me. Like, I deep down, this is the thing about me. There is a stigma in the wrestling business that workers can't be fans. That is bullshit. Sorry.
Yes.
That is absolute bullshit.
No, go for it.
Yeah, that is it, man. If I was not a fan of this business, if I didn't love doing this stuff hurts. At the end of the day, this stuff is not just all rainbows, unicorns, pillows. Sometimes this stuff hurts, and you're like, oh God, I'm going to feel that one in the morning. Yeah, I would not do it if I didn't love it. So yeah, the fan in me, deep down, was a bit crushed, but the professional in me, and the fact that I was just able to be on, this is my second House of Hardcore, and the fact that the promoter has looked to me and chosen me for both tours when they've come over here is, how could I not be just satisfied with that honor alone? So yes, it hurt a tiny bit because I was slated to be in that match, card subject to change, but I was still on the show and still super grateful for it.
Yeah, well, and ended up working against the Untouchables, who are one of probably the top tag team in the country. So, I mean,
they are. Look, very, very, very. This is my personal opinion. Nobody hate me. Very closely followed by the Flip Bros over in Melbourne, Steve and Tome. Right. Yeah, the Untouchables in my eyes, they're fantastic. Stevie and Tome, mate, if they're not picked up, this is personal opinion again. If those two guys aren't picked up in the next 3 years, well, I know that they've just become young lions.
They're heading over to Farley Dojo. Yeah,
but if they're not picked up and worldwide superstars in the next 5 years, there is something seriously wrong with this business. Because if you've ever watched them, they are phenomenal. The fact that Slater and Pitt, the Untouchables, are still here, still baffles me every day, because they are just a joy. They're a joy to watch wrestle. They really are.
Yeah.
Like, I can sit there, and that's the thing I love about indie shows. There's a lot of workers worldwide. They do their match, they get changed, they have their shower, they wait for their envelope or whatnot, and they leave. I love shows because once my match is out of the way, I you know what? At some points, as much as this sounds arrogant, and I'm not intending it to that be, sometimes I hate being the main event because you're so worried about your match sometimes, and you get that nervous energy and you're excited about it. You don't get to sit there and watch the show. damn, I love sitting there. If I'm a curtain jerker and the promoter's like, I got to put you on first, I'm like, I love that. I am done and dusted. I'm showered. By intermission, I'm deep in that show because I love watching wrestling. I don't care where it comes from. So, but that's me personally.
Right. No, look, I love that. I mean, my personal favorite Australian professional wrestler, Shazza McKenzie, she posts quite regularly about that remember that you're a fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I love that message because we're all fans of wrestling. Like, and to act like just because you get into the industry or something now you can't be a fan. Like, that's something that, like, it's a holdover from the 90s. Just forget that, man. Like, you're a fan. There's nothing wrong with being a wrestler and a wrestling fan.
Now, this sounds so cliche, but if you're actually close to me, you know that in my personal life, I had a lot go on in the last couple of years. Not so much this year, but before that, which I probably won't go into. But the reason that I've probably exploded into the wrestling indie scene, or so to speak, or become a lot more known and gone and taking all these opportunities, and the reason that I went over to the US, or 450 reach out and he says, I'm getting you out of this slump, you're coming to stay with me for a while. I had a lot of personal stuff go wrong. Wrestling, it sounds cliche, but it literally turns, I'm not going to say saved my life in quotation marks because I would never be down that rabbit hole, but it changed my life, and it showed me that you can look forward to things, whether it's coming home to watch a program or wait for the weekend because I'm going to lace up some boots or go to training, or, you know, that is my view on professional wrestling. And if you actually speak to anyone that's close to me in this business, they'll say the same thing about me, that how much I actually love this business is, yeah, it's amazing. I love it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always say you never have to look far to find inspiration in pro wrestling either.
No way. No way.
One of the things I love about it. Yeah. If you're ever feeling down, like there's plenty of stories out there within this wacky world that can easily help you realize, like, hey, I can lift myself up. And that's one of the things I love about pro wrestling. So I'm glad you touched on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's 100%. Like, I will get excited to watch. At the minute, I don't know how people feel about him or not. Some people hate him, some people love it. At the minute, I'm obsessed with Zack Sabre Jr. I think the fact that he can make you look like you've popped every single ligament in your shoulders and your back, you know, with some of his, but he can't he? Like, you can watch him and he's like, whoa. You know, I was like, how is he, like, it just is. I'm a worker and I find myself glued to the TV sometimes. I'm like, that is just phenomenal. I inspire to get that reaction from a crowd. The best feeling in wrestling is when you do something, right? And you work a spot and the spot is so clean and you're like, that was perfectly executed, and the crowd just gives you that reaction of, oh, that is the best feeling in wrestling for me anyway. You know, that's, you know, it's just phenomenal when they're living through you and they're like, I wish I was doing that. That is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's been a big year for you. We had obviously the Schwa Championship, the EPW debut, the breaking down of those imaginary barriers, House of Hardcore, Mexico, Asia. What's next? What's the goal for 2019?
Okay, I set my goals extremely high. But if I shoot for the stars and touch the treetops, I'm extremely happy. One of my highest goals, everyone's highest goal should be not to necessarily work for Vince, but to say, this weekend, my weekend is paying for my mortgage, my power bill, and, you know, sending my kid to school. I have a 14-year-old daughter. I started really early. That's a story for another day. You know, that is my goal. That is my goal always for 2019. The second that this can put food on my table, so to speak. But I would absolutely love to be even remotely considered by Ring of Honor, maybe quite a good Ring of Honor. I think that's that's an achievable goal, hopefully. Lucha Underground, to film any part of a Lucha Underground season or be in contact with them would be amazing. The fact that Australian Suicide just got in is fantastic for all of us. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, he's one that doesn't get talked about a lot when we talk about all the, you know, Now We Conquer and how everything's popping off overseas for our guys. Yeah, he's one that gets left out of the conversation a lot, unfortunately, but he's doing fantastic over there.
Yeah, so, and obviously, any of the big name feds should always be a dream of everybody. That's always on my goal list. So, but I think achievable goals, I would really love a Ring of Honor stint match. I'll go out there I've got this saying, what would you do in pro wrestling? And I'd say, listen, you've got to protect your character, yeah? That doesn't mean you go in and say, I have to win here. If someone's willing to give me a shot, but they say, listen, we've got a spot for you on Ring of Honor, but, we want you to go out there and we want you to put on a monkey suit to conceal that you're not Craven, slip on a banana peel and get pinned. Man, I've worked Ring of Honor, yeah? And then from that might lead into, okay, now you can take the monkey suit off and go out there as Craven. So I agree. I know there's the old tradition of you've got to protect your finisher, you've got to protect your character, which is fine. But, that's just my view on it. If I got offered any sort of opportunity where I could do that and then obviously try and impress a promoter, I would definitely do that.
Awesome. And where can people find you online if they want to keep up with your adventures throughout 2019 and beyond?
Okay, I feel like after I did StarCast at All In, and because I was obviously at All In and I was at StarCast, and I was pretty much just walking up and down podcast row and just happened to do every podcast. I feel like that I'm repeating myself every time, and every time I say this exact line, I don't have Twitter, and every podcaster is like, you need to get Twitter. So, unfortunately, I don't have Twitter. I've been saying for the last 6 months.
So you're not going to get that from me.
Yeah,
you're not going to get that from me because
thank God.
Australians don't do Twitter the same way Americans and stuff
They
do. We
not.
just don't. We use Facebook for that stuff.
Yes. So for that reason, I still don't have Twitter. I'm a bit of a dinosaur in that land. But you can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Australian Sensation. What I'm most active on is Instagram, and my handle is @TAS_Craven. TAS obviously standing for the Australian Sensation.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us, Craven.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I love your content, and keep doing what you're doing and helping us promote Australian wrestling.
So there you have it, the Australian Sensation Craven. 2 names that just kind of stuck, and what an interview. I can't agree with him more about challenging yourself, about pushing those boundaries, about not being tied down, and loyalty is a good thing, don't get me wrong. I am a loyal person myself. Loyalty is good. You want to be loyal to your friends, you want to be loyal to places that are good to you, to people that are good to you, but you also need to be the best you and be better than you were yesterday and challenge yourself. And if that means leaving one chapter behind or rewriting that chapter so that you can move forward, then that's what needs to be done. Craven said it, it was the best thing that ever happened to him when he decided to do that. And so I encourage anyone who is in the same spot, anyone who is thinking of it but doesn't want to hurt their friends, or just have a conversation, be open, be honest, get it out there, get it out into the world. Be as transparent as you can with how you're feeling. That is never a bad thing. Honesty is never a bad... People tell me honesty needs to be filtered. I don't believe in that shit, man. Honesty doesn't need to be filtered. We need to get as much honesty out there as we can. So be honest, have the conversation. If you end up with heat on you because you want to be better, that's not on you, really. That's on them. So moving on, if you liked that interview, if you liked listening to an Aussie grappler talk about Aussie Grapps, there are other shows that you need to listen to. This week on Wrestle Radio Australia, Todd Eastman catches up with Gods and Monsters fresh off the back of the World Series Wrestling Tour, which they were a part of. Also on the Turnbuckle, Mark Williamson stops by. That is Lord Mark Williamson, leader of the Claw, and the man who hopes to bring about the end of all things, glorifying violence, etc., etc. I don't do the shtick. He does the shtick. You need to listen to it on the Turnbuckle. It's the only place you can listen to Lord Mark Williamson this week. Definitely one that you want to check out. Now let's have a look at what's happening this week near you. In ACT, Saturday night, ICW returned to the Belconnen Community Centre for one. No card was available for this one at time of recording, but tickets start at $10. On Friday night in Victoria, Battle Championship Wrestling present BCW 25 live in Burwood East. Dowie James and Mick Moretti go at it once more. Carlo Cannon returns with his open challenge. Mad Dog defends the BCW Heavyweight Championship against Nick Berry. And Ken Shamrock returns to professional wrestling to go one-on-one with Gabriel Wolf. Channel 10's The Project will be in attendance as well, filming a piece on the show, so if you head down, you might even get your mug on TV. Tickets for that one start at $30. On Saturday night, PCW, as always, present Ignition from the Southeastern Entertainment Centre. Tickets are $15 for that one. Also on Saturday night, Warzone Wrestling Australia present the Warzone Christmas Bash at the WWA Arena in Wellington. New Heritage Champion Kaz Jordan will defend his title. Carlo Cannon and Andy Phoenix face off. Loverboy Lockie Hendricks goes one-on-one with Andy Rhodes, and the Iron Man Dowie James defends his WWA Heavyweight title against the mercenary Slade Mercer. Tickets for that show start at just $15. Over in Western Australia, Saturday night, New Horizons Pro Wrestling present Final Chapter IX, or 9. Final Chapter 9? Final Chapter IX. Both at Gate 1 Theatre in Claremont Showgrounds. London Hargreaves and Rory Holmes go to war with Society's Unwanted over the SST Legacy Tag Team titles. King Shaheel takes on Vincent Sterling with the Hybrid Championship on the line. The Art of Fighting Championship will be decided in triple threat action when the Don Michael Morleone takes on Julian Ward and Aaron O'Malley. Australia's own King of Monsters Jonah Rock challenges the Professional Low Key for the MLW title in the main event, and much, much more. Tickets start at $10. Up in Queensland on Saturday night, UPW are live from Maroochy Clippers Basketball Association for Jingle Jam. EC Diamond will defend the new UPW Heavyweight Championship and much, much more. Tickets start at $16.50. Also on Saturday night in Queensland, AWA are back at the Zoo for Final Destination. Adonis and Sorrow are scheduled for a table match. Rufio takes on Combat Wombat and Jesse Daniels in a qualifying triple threat to head to a semi-main event #1 contendership match against the winner of another qualifying triple threat featuring Mr. Queensland Wrestling Rip Riley, The Difference Tyler Daniels heading up from South Australia, and a mystery opponent. And in the main event, Showtime Jake Nova defends the AWA Heavyweight Championship against Adam Brooks in one-on-one action. Tickets for this one are $30. And in New South Wales, Newcastle Pro Wrestling present Nui Pro 74 at Charlestown Bowling Club on Saturday night. The Babes, Carter Deans and Maddie Wahlberg, take on Jackson Kelly and Will Keedus in a tag team match. The Nui Pro Women's Championship is on the line in triple threat action when Indy Hartwell defends against Shazza McKenzie and Harley Wonderland. The trios team of the Four Nations, Mick Moretti, Jack Bonza, and Madison Eagles, take on the Armada, Michael Spencer, Massive Q, and Xena in Invictus tournament qualifying action and much, much more. Tickets for that one start at $10. Meanwhile, in my home state of South Australia, Saturday night, Wrestle Rampage head to Port Adelaide Recreation Centre for the first time ever, presenting All or Nothing. Vanity Inc. take on Tyler Trench and Einar Ironside. Gorgeous Greg goes one-on-one with Corey Adams. Tommy Knight looks to continue his winning ways in singles action with Link Barnett. Mr. Juicy returns to Rampage to take on Dean Valenti. Robbie Eagles had a huge November, closing out a Super Junior Tag League in Japan, and just over the last week, as we've talked about, becoming Robbie Two Belts Eagles with big wins in World Series Wrestling and 1-4. He looks to keep that momentum rolling into December with a victory over Adelaide's own wrestling encyclopedia, Nick Golfus. Mike Boomer defends the Cruiserweight Cup against Kazaran Crow, and in a huge main event, the King of Monsters, Jonah Rock, puts his Australian National Championship on the line in a no disqualification 5-man elimination match with Rat Daddy, Damian Slater, AJ Istria, and Robbie Hart. Tickets for that one start at $15. I will be there. If you're there, come up and say hi. I hope everyone gets out this weekend to support some local Aussie Grapps, because that's the best thing you can do, is get out, support the guys and girls at the shows. Of course, purchase the streams. If you're in Melbourne on Wednesday and Thursday, of course, at RMI TV Studios. We will also have on Wednesday and Thursday next week, that's the 5th and 6th of December, at RMI TV Studios in the heart of Melbourne. Studio superstars from One Fall Entertainment will be live. Robbie Eagles is the champ. I don't know what the matches are for next week yet. I'm sure we'll find out more tonight on tonight's stream. But if you're in Melbourne, definitely get down and check it out. And if you're not in Melbourne, head to onefallentertainment.kling.com and purchase that pack. $50 for 6 shows, or $10 per show if you just want to watch individual shows. You need to get around it. We need to support Aussie Grapps, support the boys and girls, get out to the shows, buy some shirts. You know that's what we're about here. If you like what we do, please hit the subscribe button. We cover WWE on Saturdays, all the rest on Sundays, Impact on Mondays, bonus episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Wednesdays is the King of Sports Universe. So Fridays, as you know, thanks for joining us. Aussie Grapps is done. I'm going to go play Red Dead Online now because it's been taunting me all morning. I know it's there and I'm ready to get to it. I am at Greg Unchained on Twitter, at the Greg Unchained on Instagram. We collectively are the B+ Wrestle on Twitter because wrestling wouldn't fit. Like, share, subscribe, leave us a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. And thank you so much for listening.
Hold one! Arm drag!
You're not doing this. Get out. Let me tell you a personal story about Vince McMahon.
You just made the list!
So, no speak English.
Dummy! Goodbye and good night! Hold two! Arm bar!
This is the worst town I've ever been in.
It's still real to me, damn it! Dummy! Hold three! The moss covered! 3-handle family good